Yeah, I get to turn it over to Dr. Whitney. So it's all you.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for spending your lunch hour with me. I am Dr. Emily Whitney. I've worked at University of Wisconsin-La Crosse for this is going into my 15th year. Every once in a while, I'm like, I can't tell people I'm the new person anymore because it's been 15 years and it's gone super fast. The second year that I was here, I was trained in motivational interviewing, and we actually created a class because we thought it would be helpful for our public health students going out in various different aspects of public health to be able to use motivational interviewing because we were seeing it more and more as something that our students were being asked to take trainings for and seeing more about it in research literature about how it was helping people in terms of making behavior changes. So myself and Dr. Keely Reese were originally trained in it, and we did a pilot class that went really well, and then it was integrated into our curriculum. So I've been doing MI now for the last 14 and a half years, and doing different types of workshops here and there across the state for individuals such as yourselves, school counselors, and a few other places as well. A couple of random things that you may or may not want to know about me. I tend to get very passionate about things. My voice is the same, whether I'm passionate, angry, happy, or sad. It's about the same monotone level, but I cry. I cry like there's no tomorrow. So I cannot guarantee that excuse me, I was going to sneeze, will not be tears shed at some point in time. Oh, I forgot to take my allergy medications this morning. This is going to be fun for us. So sorry. Sometimes I cry. Anyway, just a heads up. It happens. It happens. It is what it is. And I make the weird, chortly noises, and my voice goes up a little bit, and then we get back on track, and it's fine. So just a heads up. Um, and while it's a webinar, the goal is to try and make it as interactive as possible for you. And I tend to talk really fast, and since it's harder to see your faces and if you're taking notes or not, if you need me to slow down or you need me to repeat something, please just, pop that into the chat, and I can go back over something so that we can make sure that we don't miss anything along the way. So the goal for today would be to kind of go over a couple of these things. Some of you have done a lot of motivational interviewing. Some of you have not. So we just want to kind of pop in and see who's done what and here and there. Um, I think we have a poll maybe, or was the poll for the next slide? I wrote
Oh,
down and then I missed my.
yeah. It can be this one. And then someone has their hand raised.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Dale, how can we help you? Or if it's a mistake, no worries, but please type in the chat if you, oh, they lowered their hand. Okay, sometimes
Okay.
it's a mistake if we raise our hand on camera. It sometimes does that. Let me go ahead and share the poll.
No problem. Um, so to kind of see just where everyone was at, um, we've got a little poll here to kind of see how you used it if you haven't used it. Um, but also, our goal is to just get everybody on the same page as to what is motivational interviewing. All of the trainings are a little bit different, and it just helps to make sure that everybody's on the same page with the same kind of ideas and definitions moving into the discussion. So we're gonna kind of give a brief overview of what is motivational interviewing. We're gonna talk about some theoretical underpinnings because they're important. In most workshops that you get with motivational interviewing, we don't necessarily talk about theories that are align well with motivational interviewing that can actually help you be more effective in your use of MI. So I think this is an important thing that we need to chat about for a few minutes. We're going to talk about some then of the key components of motivational interviewing. Everyone knows about the ORs, the open-ended questions, the affirmations, the reflections, and the summaries. But there is a chunk of things that are a broader parts of MI that make it more effective if you're using them. So we're going to chat briefly about the MI spirit, this lovely thing called rule, and then we're going to talk about change talk. That's going to align with those theories, and it's going to really be the thing that helps you use your ORs more effectively when you're using MI. I can't actually see what the poll is telling us. So Adele, can you tell me what the poll looks like, or
Oh, yes, I'm sorry that you can't see it.
oh, it's okay.
So yeah, we have, it looks like 32 of you have participated, 34, thank you. We've had one person who's never heard of it, seven who've heard of it but haven't had training, 23 that have had some training on it, and then nine who've used it regularly. So most people are in the have some training on it
Okay.
bucket.
That's fantastic. Thank you all very much for taking that poll, and thank you, Adele, for filling me in on the things. I
Oh,
appreciate
no
that.
problem. Yeah, I will end it now, but feel free to put things in the chat if you have anything to say,
Yeah.
everyone.
So one of the things that is important to oh, it pops up as you end it. That's really
Oh,
exciting.
okay. So now you can see.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now I can see, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're learning as we go. Hooray for technology. Um, So, one of the things I just want everybody to be aware of as we go into this idea of motivational interviewing, all health practitioners, when we think of health, we tend to just as the human race, we tend to focus on physical health, and that physical health tends to be diet and exercise. Those tend to be the things that everybody focuses on. But that's just the very, very, very tip of the iceberg. All of the things leading up to that are underneath, right? So we ignore things like occupational health, social health, mental health, environmental health, spiritual health, and emotional health. And as you can see, sexual health's not even anywhere in the berg, which is unfortunate because that is a huge part of a person's health as well. So when you start speaking with people, a lot of times you're going to have folks that have never had, a proper sex education class. They didn't have families that openly talked about sexual health promotion in any way, shape, or form. A lot of people that you're working with have probably hidden their identities for a long time. So we tend to take sexual health promotion in particular, and we kind of put it down at the very, very, very like 16 layers under the ocean, and we got to drill for it. So just kind of keeping that in mind as we start talking about motivational interviewing, we want to think about how we can help kind of dig below that iceberg of people who are giving you surface level answers or maybe not wanting to talk to you at all. And there's a lot of things that have gotten them to that place where we're just discussing the things at the tip of the iceberg versus getting down to the things at the bottom of the iceberg. So this lends into the theories. So before we talk too deeply about motivational interviewing, it's important to have a quick understanding of a couple of theories. So, one of them is the stages of change, otherwise known as the trans theoretical model of health. Within the trans theoretical model of health, we have these stages. The stages are not linear, right? Maybe you have heard of the stages pre contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and action, right? These are the stages where we have a person who may be thinking, I need to talk to somebody about prep, but I don't really want to talk to somebody about prep, or I need to have some STI testing done, but I don't want anybody to know that I'm sexually active, right? So pre-contemplation is that place where, maybe it's crossed our mind, but we're not actually going to move forward and do anything about it. Contemplation is that place where they're contemplating it. They know that it's important to their overall health to have the STI testing done, especially if they're engaging in high risk acts. But they're still not quite into a place where they're taking or getting to preparation, right? So preparation is that place where they're looking at places where they can go and get the STI testing done. They're looking at um, maybe even speaking with their physician about some things. This is the part where we're actually looking things up and looking for phone numbers and writing things down and actually preparing to go and do the thing. Action would be that phase where we're actually in action. We're going to talk to one of you. We're going to the physician's office. We're going to the clinic. We're actively going and doing the thing that we need to do. And then maintenance, in this particular situation, is more about a person going, you know what, that wasn't so bad. I will go and do the testing every so many months like I'm supposed to do, or every time I have unprotected sex. They get to a place where they're willing to have those conversations and engage in that testing behavior, is what we're looking at for maintenance. The thing about that is it's not anywhere near that linear. If I had a chalkboard or a whiteboard, I'd draw a little line over here and a little line over on the other side, and a line in between those connecting them, and that's the linearness of what the stages of change looks like. And the reality of it is it's big, giant, whirly circles and bells. And, we go from A to G to F to R, and then maybe we get back to B eventually. So when you're working with people, you may have someone that has been really good at speaking with you regularly, and then you don't hear from them for a while, you're having a really hard time getting hold of them. Odds are it's because we've, kind of fallen off that action maintenance track and they're back in that land of pre-contemplation. Something's happened and they just don't necessarily want everybody to know. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to do the things. There's something there that has just kind of gotten them off the beaten path. So it's important to understand that motivational interviewing helps us move a person through those stages. So when we're having our MI conversations, using our open-ended questions, our affirmations, our reflections, and our summaries, what that's doing is it's helping us recognize, and we're going to hear whether a person is in pre-contemplation. We're going to hear whether a person is in contemplation, in preparation, or action. And based on that, we are going to use our oars to strengthen that change talk. So we're going to talk about all of these things as we go, but we're going to refer back to these stages when we start talking about these oars. So understanding that a person sometimes just, they just aren't thinking about it. There's also another theory called the precaution adoption process model. In that one, it almost aligns exactly with stages of change, but in the precaution adoption process model, PAPM, PAPM, this one has unaware is the first stage. Instead of pre-contemplation, it's unaware. Sometimes you have somebody that you're working with who's just totally unaware that they're supposed to be doing any of these things, that there's help available, that anything, they just don't know. They're just very unaware, right? They just became sexually active. Maybe they've just transitioned. Maybe they've just come out and they're starting to become sexually active and they haven't had anyone to talk to them about any of these things. So they literally do not know. And sometimes it's hard to imagine that there's somebody out there that doesn't know a thing. But I have unofficial foster kids. So for the last 6 years, I've housed unofficial foster children. And with the first set of teens that lived with me, so in the state of Wisconsin, by the way, any child age 17 or older can live anywhere they want as long as a parent doesn't report them missing or run away. And I knew this one young man's family, they were having issues. He showed up on my doorstep and said, Grandma said I could move in. I was like, well, I was with your grandma all day yesterday. Nobody told me anything about this, but okay, come on in. And then 2 weeks later, he was like, can my friend whose dad was just arrested for meth and whose mom is in trouble as well, can she live here too? And I was like, let's call social services and make sure this is all fine. After we triple checked everything, they moved in, and it was almost 2 weeks. I'm sad to say. That I was like, okay, I'm doing a really big grocery run. Do you guys have everything you need? Do we need more soap? Do you need more toothpaste? What do you need? And they're like, I could use a toothbrush. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. Come, roll it back, friends. What are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, I could use this deodorant, a whole bunch of things. I didn't know that they didn't bring those things with them. I did not realize that they were not brushing their teeth every day. And this was not something that they had been doing. Um, they did not learn these habits in their home. So you potentially are going to be working with people who grew up in homes who didn't, that were just in strict survival mode, and like the day-to-day actions of things were not something that they did. So the idea of, how do you not know that you're supposed to go and get tested, or how do you not know that this is available? For some of those individuals, they don't. They really and truly just do not know. They're completely unaware that everything is out there and available to them, because they didn't have those families where these things were ever discussed. So we did get them toothbrushes in case anybody's wondering. We were working on some of those daily habits and just things like daily showers and sorting laundry and those basic skills. So you're going to have individuals who don't actually necessarily know, like they made the phone call, but they don't know what to do next, or any of those kinds of things. Teaching those things are skills that people learn. And if you grow up in a chaotic household or a neglectful household, odds are you're going to have a harder time reaching out to help with those things. And that's why these stages become important, because you may have somebody who's completely unaware, they're in pre-contemplation, but They don't necessarily have the self-efficacy, which is what comes from our social cognitive theory over here, or the behavioral capability to move forward in taking action. And again, the use of MI helps us build self-efficacy, behavioral capability for people to be able to move through those stages of pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance. So when we look at social cognitive theory, there's a lot more to stages of change, but there's also a lot more to social cognitive theory. These are just five of about 15 different constructs. But these tend to pertain to a lot of just everyday things that people are doing, right? Our self-efficacy is, I have a student somewhere in this group. She should pop into the chat and type in what she remembers about self-efficacy. She's over there hiding, like, nope, not doing it. That's okay. So self-efficacy is our not self-esteem, right? It's self-efficacy. It's our feeling as to whether or not we're capable of doing something. Do I feel capable of completing something? So just as an exercise example, like I cannot do step aerobics to save my life. I have no self-efficacy when it comes to step aerobics. I'm like flailing around. I cannot do the spinny turn thing. I fall off and like knock other people down. It's just I haven't really taken the time to learn, right? So if somebody does not feel like they have the self-efficacy to do something, they don't feel like they're capable of making the phone call or having that conversation, that becomes a little bit tricky in moving them forward to do something. Behavioral capability lends more to the skills, right? Do I have the skills to be able to do this thing? Some people don't necessarily have not been taught to call somebody and schedule an appointment for anything, and to show up on time, right? And that goes back to households. I would imagine that many of you have people who make appointments via phone or in person, and then they do not show up. A part of that is just sort of the population you're working with, but part of that is people who grew up in those chaotic homes don't necessarily understand that other people's time is important. Not in a way that is mean or they're just blowing people off. They literally just lose track of time and forget that they have committed to something and then they don't show up and are not sure why people are upset because that's how they grew up. That's how everyone treated them. That's how their families worked with time. And so that's how they work with time. So that expectation of making an appointment and showing up to that appointment is a new concept for some people. And that goes into this idea of behavioral capability. And again, that's a skill to teach. Reciprocal determinism is the idea that our environment and our behaviors interact and interact with our decision making. So all of the time, those things are happening. And you see that, I'm sure, with a lot of the individuals that you're working with, where if they are, things can be going really well, and so more than likely, the decision making process will lead them to follow through with the things that you need to follow through with. But if something in their environment is off, then their behavior is going to be off, and their decision making process is also going to be off. And that's just something to be aware of when we're using motivational interviewing because we can help people get back on track. We can ask open-ended questions in a way that we can learn about what is going on with their decision-making process, their current environment, and their behaviors that may help us be able to get them back on track to following through with the things that we need them to do. And then emotional coping responses, right? This is the way we all cope with different things. Some of you may shop to cope with things, a little retail therapy. Some of you may exercise. Some of you may clean. I'm going to need to talk to you people after the end of this webinar. I got to hire somebody because I need some help. Some of us eat. Some people drink, right? Some people use sex as an emotional coping response. So those emotional, and again, using sex as emotional coping response isn't bad until it tips over into the thing where it is bad. Just like shopping is okay until it tips over into a point where it's no longer, it gets to a point where it becomes an addiction more and more, and we spend too much money and those kinds of things where it becomes a behavior that is something that hits that disorder type of marker and we have to watch it, right? So we need to understand everybody's emotional coping responses. MI is a lovely tool that can help us in terms of stabilizing conversations to help address some of those emotional coping responses. It can be very vulnerable to talk about what is going on in your sex life and things that you're doing. It's not a conversation that people necessarily want to have, or they think that they're going to have to divulge everything, and you literally do not need everything. You just need to maybe know who else they have been seeing so that you can do the contact tracing. But people build up this conversation in their head that it's going to be really horrible. And so when they sit down to talk with you on the phone, there's anger and resentment and all of those kinds of things coming through. And MI is a communication tool that can help us stabilize that conversation and help that person move forward in terms of um, recognizing that they're being heard, they're not being judged, and that you're there to help them. You're part of the team, that you're walking this path together, and that everything is going to be okay. So, am I understanding these particular theoretical underpinnings is helpful because when you're having conversations with people and you're listening to what they're saying, it can help us figure out where they are and meet them where they're at, stabilize the conversations, and help move people forward. Before I move on, because that was a lot of information in like 7.5 minutes about theories. Does anyone have any questions about theories? I think we have a poll too for those of you that do use theories
Yeah, I'll go
about,
ahead and launch the poll, and then if
yeah,
people have questions too, feel free to type them in the chat or put them in
a
Q&A.
question or a statement like, it's noon. Why are we talking about theories? I'd rather be eating. That's okay too.
Huh, let's see. It's showing that the poll is ended, which is not true. Oh, you know what? This is education for me. It looks like people answered all the poll questions. It did it all at the
Oh,
same time, which my apologies. I didn't realize I needed to make each of them a separate poll. I apologize for that.
oh no, that's okay.
So, yeah, let me go to share results so you can see. Thank you all for doing all of the questions.
Yeah, way to go, you guys. All
Yeah,
right, so the stage that is pre-contemplation and contemplation is definitely the stages that most people are in most of the time. I mean, we're all in those stages most of the time. Some of you were like, am I going to go to the webinar? Am I not going to go to the webinar? I should go to the webinar. Okay, I'm going to go to the webinar. Right. So, this is what we call ambivalence in motivational interviewing. And we all have it and use it every day as we're making decisions. It's just kind of a natural part of life. And then trying to move forward into that place where we, move forward into that action phase. Well, thank you for bringing that up again. Okay. If you think of some questions, please feel free, or just thoughts, please feel free to throw them into the chat, and we will continue on. So we get into the meaty parts of motivational interviewing and we go, what is motivational interviewing? It's a guiding rather than a directing style of communication. So we all tend to be people who prefer figuring things out on our own and not being told what to do, right? It's not fun being told what to do. Most of us know what we should be doing and how we should be doing it without people telling us. So when we think about this from like the standpoint of maybe somebody who has been smoking and has been wanting to quit, they know all of the reasons why they need to quit. They've heard a million times all of the things and reasons why they should quit, and they know that they just haven't gotten to a place where they're ready to really commit to the decision to quit. So the same thing happens for individuals who potentially are not using condoms or dental dams every time they're having a sexual encounter. They know they should be using them. They know why they should be using them. They've potentially even had a previous STI that they don't want to get again, and yet they still make a choice to not use protection when they're doing something. And when we get in and we start telling people, you have to do this, you have to do this, you should be doing this. Typically, what happens is people dig their heels in and they will do the opposite. So, Bill Miller and Steve Rolnick are the two individuals who originated MI. And it was originated in addictions counseling. And they found that when they listened more and they talked less, people were more likely to come up with their own reasons for wanting to change their behaviors and were more likely to commit to them. So we're finding our own internal reasons for changing versus all of the external things that people are telling us. Um, and sometimes that makes a huge difference in making a change. I think for all of us, at some point in time, there may have been a behavior change that you wanted to make in your life, and you knew all of the reasons, and you had people telling them. But there's just that moment when it kind of clicks for you, and you're able to make that commitment for yourself and find out what your own reasons for making those changes are. And you're more likely to continue to do that, and it's more sustainable when a person makes those decisions on their own versus being told what to do. So the whole idea behind motivational interviewing is that it's a guiding style. We're doing a ballroom dance versus, WW SmackDown wrestling. We're not trying to wrestle the person to the ground. You will get STI tested. It's more of this lovely ballroom dance. Here are some free clinics, here are some options, right? We're guiding that person towards those choices versus demanding that they do the thing. And we found that there's a lot of research on motivational interviewing in a lot of different settings. There's a good chunk of it for sexual health promotion as well. And all of that literature says that when motivational interviewing is used, especially in context with sexual health promotion education, people are more likely to follow through with things like wearing condoms, getting tested, all of those kinds of things. MI is very person oriented as well, um, which is good, right? We want to make sure that our interventions are not necessarily one size fits all. So you can tailor MI to every single person through the questions you're asking, the types of reflections you're using, the summaries that you use, all of those kinds of things. So it becomes very person centered and it becomes very tailored to the individual that you're working with, each and every one of the conversations, which also makes it culturally centered because, again, you're focusing in on that person and their culture, their needs, all of those kinds of things. It lends itself really well to being a very equitable form of communication because you're just meeting that person where they're at and trying to figure out what skills and knowledge they have, their behavioral capability, and then guiding them to those resources so that they can move things forward themselves. And we're not trying to do things for people. In public health, in our classes here at UWO, when we're talking to our students about public health, we talk about not doing things to a community, but doing things with a community. Doing things to people is the worst kind of public health practice anyone can ever do, not taking into consideration the voices of the individuals that we're working with. So, MI is a tool that really allows us to listen to people's voices and make sure that we're working with them and not just telling people, what to do and how to do it. So it also allows us to explore ambivalence. Again, ambivalence is this thing that we see every day, right? People are ambivalent about a lot of different things. We're probably all ambivalent about getting up and going to work this morning. And I was just ambivalent about getting up. I have one of the unofficial foster teens I have right now has a 3-year-old toddler, and she did not sleep well last night. So this morning she's like, we should sleep a little more. And I'm like, yes, we should. Let's do that. So ambivalence is again just part of our lives. It's nothing to in a conversation. It's not something that we need to be worried about or concerned that it's ever going to go away or that this client is being difficult. Ambivalence is just part of our everyday decision-making processes. Um, Motivational interviewing also helps people find again their own reasons for making the change. The goal is for people to figure out why they want to do the thing and why it's important to them versus why we think it's important to them. I would imagine that you all have a long list of reasons why you would love the individuals you're working with to do regular testing and check in with you and access the resources you're sharing and all of the things. And you know why that improves their health and why it's going to help them in the end. The kicker is we need the individuals we're working with to understand that as well. Like they have to know why they want to do it versus why we want them to do it. We're gonna try and see if this video works. Some of you may have seen it, and hopefully you can hear it. We'll see. Because this is also a big part of MI that leads back to our iceberg that we looked at a little bit earlier. So let's see. Oh, nope, you don't need to see my email. I mean, if because that's not going to help us. Let's see if I can get the right. Oh, maybe it's going to go. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see this?
Yep, I can see it. And
Okay.
I'll let you know if we can or can't hear it.
Okay, perfect.
It's just, there's all this
I can hear
pressure,
it.
you know?
Okay.
And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
I'm
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just
Don't.
try to say things.
Okay, so some of you may have seen that before. If you have, thank you for watching again. If you haven't seen it before, this is an important part of MI. It's not about the nail. This ties into this idea with MI that when we're meeting people where we're at, it's because we're truly listening to them. Um, I would imagine that all of you have had a conversation with a child, a parent, a significant other in which yeah, it does, right? It shows the importance of asking people if they just want to vent or want an opinion. Exactly, right? We've had those conversations where we go home and we want to vent and all of a sudden everybody's trying to fix it and you're like, "No, no, I don't need it fixed. I just need you to listen to what I'm saying," right? So we people don't necessarily need us to fix things for them. Again, they know what they need to be doing, but sometimes they just need us to hear what they're saying and validate those feelings for them to move forward and figure out what their reasons for making a change is. And that means we really and truly have to listen without jumping to fixing the thing first, right? So we call this no fixing, no fixing, no fixing in MI. And if you were in person, I'd make you put your hands on top of each other and we would yell, no fixing, no fixing, no fixing, while smacking our fists together like this. So feel free to type in some no fixing, no fixing, no fixing in the chat. You are all in this profession because you want to help people, right? We do want to fix it. We want to help fix things so people are healthy and can move forward without any type of illnesses. But the reality is we can't fix it for them. They're the only ones that can fix it. Yeah, no fixing times 10. Thank you, Adele. This idea of no fixing, no fixing, no fixing becomes really important in MI because sometimes well, all the time we need to listen. We need to listen to what people are saying, and we need to recognize that sometimes people just need to be heard, and they really don't need us to fix the problem. So when we think about listening through an MI lens, we want to listen with presence and undivided attention, right? And that can be, thank you. I love that you're putting it in the chat. So good. Is it Lorraine or Lorianne? I'm going to say that wrong. I'm sorry. And Adrian, I apologize for mispronouncing people's names, but thank you. Um, it is so hard. It's so hard to not try to fix everything for everybody because you are amazing human beings and you're helpers. And this is where it gets tricky to listen sometimes too, right? You've had a very long day and you have one more person you're talking to. It is hard sometimes to listen with undivided attention because we're thinking of the three people that we need to see next. the groceries that we have to get, the people that need help once you get home, all of those things. So it can be difficult for us to create a space where we can fully pay attention to the one person that we are talking to at the time. But that is the goal, and best practices with MI is to try and listen with presence and focus on that one person. And using, if you're in person, using all of your senses. If you're on the phone, really using those ears to listen. I would imagine that you all listen with acceptance and non-judgment. You might be shaking your head, your brain in your head, and got your poker face on when you're like, oh, why did you do that thing? That's a terrible idea. Um, but we don't want our faces to show that. As we're chatting with people, we want to try to show that presence of yep, okay, that is a new behavior for you. So let's talk about why that's happening, kind of a thing, versus showing that potential judgment. The goal is, to listen with curiosity, trying not to interrupt. The thing about MI too is that, and listening from a conversational standpoint, we have all been trained since we were little to ask a lot of questions as a person is talking and to build rapport. And sometimes we are then asked to jump in or we feel like we need to jump in and be like, oh, hey, this thing happened to me too. When we do that, when we're trying to use MI, what it does is it turns the table of the conversation and makes the focus on us instead of on the people that we're working with. So when we're using motivational interviewing, the goal is to ask questions and to use reflections as a way to build rapport, but not to put in our opinions or our thoughts or share stories about ourselves at the time we're trying to, get somebody to move along with a behavior change. Because it tends to change the direction of the conversation to us, and then the focus becomes us rather than the person. So when we talk about listening with presence, that's part of what we're talking about as well. And silence, being comfortable with the silence is something that's really important. Just pretend like you're on a Zoom call doing a webinar and everybody's listening, but you have really no idea how everybody feels about the information because you can't see them. Learning to be comfortable with that silence is also a skill that often needs to be practiced as well, being okay with that silence. So more than anything, we want to listen to understand than listening to just respond. Sometimes, especially when people are learning MI from the get-go, it's really hard to try and listen for their change talk and which stage they're in, and you're trying to figure out how to form a reflection. And so we're just listening to respond. And sometimes, you've had that really busy day, you've seen multiple clients, it's just been a rough day. And we get to that point where we're just listening to respond to what people are saying, and instead of really listening to understand what they're trying to tell us. Because a lot of times people have a lot to say that is not being spoken out loud, and you have to listen for those components too. So one of the core most important things about MI is listening to hear, and that is part of, or listening to understand, that is part of the MI spirit. So MI spirit, that top yellow bubble, includes things like acceptance, evocation, listening for understanding, meeting people where they're at. So when we're using the MI spirit, it helps us with our ORs, our change talk, and our MI principles to create a really effective MI conversation. So the spirit of MI is this idea of meeting people with acceptance, using open-ended questions to evoke, and really listening to where they're at, and then the no fixing, no fixing, no fixing, right? Um, the next item we're going to talk about from the MI spirit is our MI principles. And then we're going to jump into our ORs, and then we're going to go into change talk. So as a summary up to this point, right, we've kind of talked about that iceberg of health and how sexual health promotion is often not even listed on the iceberg. So nobody's getting information really well from family members or from anywhere else, and that's a problem. And an important part of MI is being able to help people figure out and help people navigate towards those resources. We want to make sure that we're using those theories to use this kind of culturally centered, people-centered communication tool. And all of that lends into this idea of really listening to people and using that spirit of MI to meet them where they're at and be willing to kind of walk this journey with them. So this next core construct of MI is called the principles MI. And the first principle, so rule, we like acronyms in MI, right? Motivational interviewing MI. We've got a lot of them. ORs, we're going to talk about darn cat here in a few minutes. We've got a lot of acronyms. So rule is resist the writing reflex, understand your client's motivation, listen to your client, and empower your client. So when we talk about resisting the writing reflex, that is what I like to call the have you trieds, right? So this is the part where we jump in, we try to fix everything. We ask, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you done this? What about this? Why can't you do this? So this is the part where we are jumping in and we are really trying to fix things and give suggestions, like out of a good place. It's not like we're trying to do it to be mean. We're just trying to help a person be healthy and do the things that they're supposed to be doing. And the tricky part with that is we want the person to be able to do those things on their own. We want them to make the choice. We want them to do this so it becomes a sustainable part of their life and something that they do regularly. So we can't fix it for them. They need to do the thing themselves. So learning to like tame that writing reflex is really, really difficult. I am in this profession because I want to be a helper too, and I want to fix things for people. And it is tough. It is tough to teach people things and let them do them themselves. It's tough to watch your clients make decisions and not listen to the things that you've suggested and learn the hard way. My best example of this is I used to work with youth and I was doing this little youth group and this one kid came in and he's like, "Hey, I got to tell you something because I'm really worried about my mom." I'm like, "Okay, but do you want everybody here to hear?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's fine. What happens in the classroom stays in the classroom, right?" I'm like, "Yes, it does." So for many reasons. So he was like, "Okay, here's the thing. I was told by my mom not to do this thing repeatedly, like multiple times, and I did it anyway, and now I'm grounded, and it's a fair punishment." And I said, "Okay, so you did something you weren't supposed to do. You're grounded, but you're okay with the punishment. So tell me, why are you worried about your mom?" And he said, "Well, I had my mom sit down with me, and I asked her why, if I've been told multiple times not to do something, and I do it anyway, why would I do that?" And she responded by saying, "Well, some people just have to learn from experience. And that's why I'm worried about my mom. I think she's going to have a lot of experiences from him." So, he was 9 at the time. His name is Isaac. He's older now and he's doing just fine. But the reality is that some people you can say, "Hey, don't touch that hot burner." And they're like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't want to get burned." And the other kid, you're like, "Hey, don't touch that hot burner." And they're like, hand on the burner immediately. Some people just have to learn from experience to be able to figure things out. And then the tricky thing for a lot of people that we potentially are working with in Wisconsin is our substance use disorders, right? We have people that have parents who have substance use disorders. Potentially, they might have some learning disabilities related to parents drinking or using a substance in utero. And then that makes that even harder for them to be able to learn from an experience. So, you just have to keep working with them and hoping that things start to click. And that repetitiveness is something that will help them learn from that experience. But it might be, 10 or 12 or 15 experiences before we get to the point where we're like, "Oh yeah, no, I don't want to do this." So it's just something to keep in mind that some people learn from experience, and this is why many of us have gray hair. It's really not why we have gray hair, but it is fun to say that sometimes. So that's where we're at. So resisting the writing reflex, right? We don't want to jump into the have you trieds before we've given people the opportunity to brainstorm ideas about the ways in which they can kind of fix things on their own. We want to understand our clients' motivations, right? Why are they doing what they're doing? Listening to your client. We've talked about this idea of listening. It's just so important. Hearing what they're not saying, and when they're deflecting, being able to, roll with those deflections in a way that can be useful. And then empowering your client. By doing all of these things, we are empowering them to make their own decisions. We're helping them move through those stages. We're building their self-efficacy. We're building their behavioral capability, and that helps to get them to move forward. Which brings us to our ORs. To make all of this happen, we need to use open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. I have a packet that I put together for you that has a few handouts in it, and one of them is uh, an asking a better questions page. Open-ended questions, we think that we all ask open-ended questions, but the reality is they are open-ended, but we don't always get, ooh, thank you. Adele's put the link to the PDF in the chat. So if you click on that, you should be able to get to those handouts. And it's about 4 pages in the asking better questions, and you can practice these on your own. The idea is, though, that sometimes we ask a question and we get a yes or no answer, or we ask a question and it sounds to the person a little bit more accusatory than it should be. So, for example, I'm going to type one of these into the chat. Why? Well, I'm not going to talk and type at the same time. That's not going to go well. Right? And this is probably a question you would never ask anyone, but why didn't you use protection? So when we say that out loud, right, you may be saying it with kindness, but it comes across as something that is accusatory. And then what you're going to get is an, I don't know, and a shoulder shrug. So the aim is then to change this into a better open-ended question. So sometimes the best open-ended questions are statements, and they don't necessarily have to hit the nail on the head, as we say. You can broaden the question out to get to the behavior that you want, right? So some other questions on the sheet are like, you knew you could get an STI from that behavior, didn't you? Aren't you worried about infecting other people? Why haven't you answered our calls before now? Don't you think your partner deserves to know? Are you sure that's everyone? So all of those questions, they're not mean questions, but they're going to get you yes or no answers, and some of them are going to just shut people down. So the aim is to turn those into better questions. And it may be, tell me a little bit, right? So if we add the words tell me to something, tell me a little bit about why you're not using protection right now. It turns it into a much softened statement, and it's giving the person the opportunity to discuss why they are not able to do something. And maybe somebody says, well, I am out of money and I didn't have time to swing past any place to grab free condoms, and it just sort of happened. Or, why, this person sort of coerced me and I am where I am, right? So we don't know why they didn't use it. We just know that it wasn't used. But we want to ask the question in a way that gives the person opportunity to be able to answer. So when you think of open-ended questions, you want to use how and what. You want to try to avoid why because it can be accusatory. And when you're using the how and the what and even why, adding a tell me to it. Tell me a little bit about how you feel it's important to protect your partners, right? So changing up some of those questions in a way that we're getting feedback from a person about why they would want to contact their partners helps us get to a place where we can ask them who they are so that we can contact them. This one on the sheet that says, you knew you could get an STI from that behavior, didn't you? We could change that into, tell me a little bit about what you know about getting STIs from high-risk sex behaviors, right? Because again, we don't actually know what people know. And they might not know. Some people think that, penetration type sex is the only way. Sorry that I'm doing hand movements down here. Is the only way that they might get an STI. And we know that that is not the case, right? So they might not know. When you're looking at those questions, your goal is to turn them into better open-ended questions. So when you are opening that conversation and potentially doing something like contact tracing, starting off the conversation with, hey, tell me a little bit about how you're doing today. Tell me a little bit about some of the behaviors you've been engaging in. Tell me what you know about the risk of STI for this particular behavior. It makes it more conversational. It takes some of the judgment out of the conversation. So when we're asking open-ended questions, you want to think about how you're asking that open-ended question and changing it in a way that you're going to get more than just a yes or no answer. So if you think in your head of a question and you say it out loud and somebody can say yes or no, then you want to work to find a way to change that so that you are going to be able to glean a little bit more information from it. So there is a practice sheet in there for you. And if anyone wants to, send me their answers, you'll have my information at the end too, and you can say, does this work? Um, so that's what our open-ended questions looks like. Speaking of questions, what questions might any of you have about open-ended questions really quick?
Yeah, people can put stuff in the chat or the Q&A. I'll go ahead and share the poll right now too while we're waiting for that, because people did answer the question about what was the ORS principle that they used the least. So we kind of have a lot of different answers for this one.
Yeah. Open-ended. Yeah, it's kind of split between everything. The beauty of MI is when you're using all of it together, it is more effective. MI is not a panacea, but when you're using all of the components together, it can really make for a more effective conversation. So if you're starting the conversation with those open-ended questions, it can be really, really helpful. Oh, so what do you think about using disease comp to introduce an open-ended question to help motivate like reinfection risks? There is a spot in MI that you can ask those questions. You could absolutely say like, tell me what you know about this particular disease and how many people are getting it. You could ask the open-ended question like that. I would be careful with opening with too many stats because it can be hard for people to understand the stats off the top of their head. But tell me what you know about this particular disease and how many people get it can be a really great way to introduce that and the reinfection risks. Or you could even say, hey, tell me what you know about reinfection risks. Tell me what you've heard about those things. And then you can hear what people have to say and what they do or don't know about it. Yes, it is hard. Sometimes people verbally say it, and it does not always match their actions. So how to navigate that and noticing they say something but action doesn't match. That's going to be where you start to use some of your reflections. So on one hand, you know this, and on the other hand, sometimes we still do this. So you are able to validate what they're saying and at the same time also kind of open up the conversation to the times where you know that they're not necessarily following through. And we're going to talk about those reflections here in just actually 1 second right now. If you turn the page in your little packet, it brings us to those reflections that go to Olivia's question about how to navigate some of those things. So I was talking about there are 11 types of reflections: simple, complex, reframing, amplified, double-sided, effective, a metaphor, emphasizing choice, coming alongside, agreement with the twist, and continuing the paragraph. I was talking about a double-sided reflection. So it explores and summarizes the client's ambivalence. It starts with the resistance end and it starts with the resistance on one end, and then the other end is supposed to favor the behavior change. And we just have to be careful with our connector. We don't want to use the word but because it negates everything that we said before. So you may have a client like, I don't want to have this awkward conversation, but I also don't want someone to get sick because of me. And we would respond with, on one hand, part of you wants to avoid the awkward conversation. And on the other hand, part of you cares about not seeing anyone get sick because of you. So with Olivia's example, we, oh, I, you may have to download them to your computer to print them.
Yeah, I think that will be the case, Kim. Thanks for checking on that. If you download it to your computer, you should be able to print it.
Yeah. Um, so with Olivia's example, on one hand, sometimes we don't use, I'm not sure what the issue specifically is, Olivia, so I'm making something up. I'm sorry. On one hand, you're sometimes we don't use the condoms as regularly as we should, and on the other hand, you know that this is a really important thing for these reasons. So the reflection there can give you the opportunity to acknowledge and let the person know that they aren't necessarily doing the thing, but also you're hearing what they're saying, right? You're acknowledging what they are saying, but we're also acknowledging both points in the conversation, the part that you know to be true, the part that they know to be true, but the part where we need them to move forward. Does that help a little bit, Olivia? Maybe. So our different reflections. Oh, good. Thank you. Um, the different reflections do different things. A simple reflection helps stabilizes a conversation, and it really is just kind of a reflection of what people are saying. And you may say, are people not going to know that I'm repeating back what they said to them? When a person is feeling vulnerable or angry, they tend to just want to be heard, so they really don't notice that you're virtually saying, repeating back to them what they've said. So the example statement here is, it's exhausting having to think about telling people from my past. And then we would respond with, you're exhausted by the thought of reaching out to all past partners. So you are just reframing what they are saying, but that simple reflection can help stabilize a conversation. And you may have somebody that says, I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk about this. It's just frustrating. And you just say you're angry and annoyed, right? So we're just simply reflecting some of the thoughts that that person is having at the time, and that can help stabilize things. From there, we have things like a complex reflection that gets to some deeper meaning in things, a reframing reflection. If I'm guessing some of you have a client that goes down that spiral every time about the same thing, a reframing reflection can help you kind of stop the spiral and have it reframed in a different way. And redirect the conversation. So in this example, we have, I can't believe I have to do this. This whole thing is humiliating. Our reframe is, you want to handle this in a way that protects people's health, even though it's hard, right? So we're reframing that in, we know you want to protect people, you want to handle this the right way, even though it's hard. So we're just sort of reframing things a little bit, and that can help that person that's kind of stuck in that spiral. Amplified reflections, I want to note really quickly because I'm terrible at them. You have to, amplified are really good. If you have somebody that's really stuck, an amplified reflection is a great way to see how stuck they are. My mom was a master of amplified reflections. She was a vocational rehabilitation counselor. No idea she was trained in MI until I took this MI class. And I was trained in MI, and then I came home and said to her, you have been using MI on me my entire life. And she cackled and started laughing so hard she almost fell out of her chair and was like, I cannot confirm nor deny the use of MI throughout your childhood. She was brilliant at amplified reflections. That's all I got to say there. You want to be careful when you use an amplified because you don't want any hits of sarcasm, and you want to make sure that your voice stays stable throughout. So since my voice tone and tenor doesn't change, you'd think I'd be really good at this. I'm not. I sound like a 1980s Mean Valley girl when I do these. So an amplified is just, it's amplifying the situation and making it bigger. And if you say them with any kind of sarcasm or an upturn at the end of it, it tends to sound like you're being mean, and that is not what this particular one. Haley, hi Haley, it's so good to see you. It is so very effective if it's done the right way. We just have to be careful with that. So the example statement from the client is, I can't believe I have to do this. Oh, nope, I lied. I really don't see why I need to tell anyone. It's none of their business. So our sample reflection, and I know it's going to sound a little bit mean coming out of me, but just try to picture this with the MI spirit and a flat tone of voice. So there's absolutely no one. Oh, sorry, let's try it again. So there's absolutely no one you think that has any right to know. So it sounds kind of mean, right? So there's absolutely no one you think has the right to know. You just want to keep that flat and keep that tone of voice as kind as possible. And we're just amplifying it because probably this person is saying what they're saying because they're embarrassed and feeling vulnerable, not because they don't actually want people to know. But if we amplify it, that person's going to be like, well, no, people have the right to know. And then we can say, do like a double-sided at that point. So on one hand, you don't really want to tell people, and on the other hand, you understand how important it is to let others know about this. And then that's going to help you move that conversation forward. So the amplify can be really, really effective in getting people unstuck. You just want to watch your tone of voice on those. We talked about the double-sided. Effective is bringing emotions into it. Sometimes a person is saying everything's fine, this is not a big deal, and you know that it's a big deal, so you're just going to bring that emotion in. You're feeling scared, you're feeling afraid, you're feeling whatever. Metaphors can be fun to use. Some people are very visual, right? So our example statement is, every time I think about calling him, it's like reliving the whole diagnosis all over again. So our sample reflection there is it's like each phone call rips the bandage off before it's had a chance to heal. So we're just using that metaphor to kind of reframe what that person is saying and validating their experience. So the reflections in particular are meant to validate a person's experience and help them feel like they are actually being heard. Our last three or four are emphasizing a person's choice, like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to do this. It's okay. You get to decide what you want to do, and we will help you figure out where to go. It's completely up to you. A coming alongside where we're not really telling people one thing or another. We're just saying, you're not convinced this conversation is going to help. Tell me a little bit more about what you think is going to help. We're just going to kind of walk alongside them. The agreement with a twist is one of those things where they're like, it's my business. I'm not telling anybody. Everybody back off. And you're saying things like, it's your life. You should be able to make your own decisions. Making your own choices helps you to be more successful. That part's the twist, right? Because they know that they should be doing this thing. And so when we put that twist on, making your own choices helps you to be more successful, they have to stop and think about what that actually means to them. Continuing the paragraph is the you know, a person just kind of trails off. I keep putting off calling my ex about this, and then we would respond. And part of you is waiting for the right moment because you want to say it in a way that feels right. And then that helps move that conversation forward in terms of getting the person to go, yeah, yeah, but I know I need to do it. And then you can maybe brainstorm some ideas and action plan from there. Our affirmations, it's an affirmation is a way of helping a person build some self-confidence, even when they are not feeling it. It's like cheerleading, but not really cheerleading. We've always had, you've all done something where you're like, I did not do that particularly well, and then everybody's telling you you did a great job, and you're like, no, I didn't. An affirmation is a way, it's almost like a reflection where we're letting people know that they're doing things well and they're trying hard, and we recognize that without doing the cheerleading thing that feels a little inauthentic. So there is a page on affirmations in that packet. It says page 19 on it. Sorry, I had some pageation issues. I think it's like page 7 or 8 in your packet. But it just goes over different ways to create affirmations. There are some examples like you clearly have the insight to recognize the risk here and the courage to do something before it gets more serious. You've been through a lot together, and the fact that you've stayed together says a lot about your love and commitment. So you're just pulling on the strengths the person has and putting those into the conversation. This is the least used of all of the ors, and it's one of the most important, especially if you're working with vulnerable populations that feel vulnerable or have low self-esteem. Pulling in some of the affirmations can help build that self-esteem, self-efficacy, and confidence to move things forward. The last one of the pages, next to last pages in your packet is summaries. There are 3 different types of summaries: a collecting summary, a linking summary, and a transitional summary. And they are just what they sound like. A collecting summary, we're pulling a few parts of the conversation together to make sure we're on the same page with the person we're talking to. The linking summary, we might be linking to a past conversation. When last we chatted, you said this, how is it going? And a transition summary tends to be the one where we might be transitioning to a place where we can do some brief action planning. It sounds like you're determined to make this change. Let's talk about how that can happen. Tell me where you want to go from here. So that's what your transition summary is going to look like, which brings us to this idea of change talk. Um, Again, ambivalence is normal. There are 2 types of change talk. One is preparatory, and the other is mobilizing change talk. So when we look at these 2, oh, my slides do not want to advance. Preparatory is our darn, D-A-R-N, and mobilizing is CAT, C-A-T. So preparatory is desires, abilities, reasons, and needs. So this is going to be where the person's in pre-contemplation and contemplation. And mobilizing change talk is going to be where that person is moving over to preparation into action. So the goal is to listen for these things. If you hear somebody saying, I want, I can, I have a reason for doing this, then you want to strengthen that with some sort of reflection. When they say, well, I really want to make this change, it sounds like a simple reflection works here. It sounds like you're really determined to make this change happen. On one hand, you know this past behavior hasn't been working for you, and on the other hand, you're ready to move forward and make this change. So we want to strengthen their change talk, whatever kind of change talk that is, preparatory or mobilizing. We want to use those reflections to strengthen it and help them move forward. Um, and please know that you will hear ambivalence, change talk, and sustain talk, just keeping the status quo within the same conversation, probably within, 4 sentences of each other. There's a really good chance that you will hear all of those things within in one 5-minute conversation, and that's okay. The goal with the reflections is to use them when you start to hear sustained talk and you're hearing with sustained talk, that's where an amplified reflection comes in handy, right? Because we're stuck and we want to pop them out of being stuck. So the reflections are the tool that you use to move a person into that change talk, which is moving them through the different types or through our stages from pre-contemplation to contemplation to preparation and action. And I make it sound super easy. Know that people will go back and forth and in between. But as you're using MI and using these reflections, you're actually really helping to move those conversations forward. So it might not happen in the first or second conversation, but by the fifth or the sixth, you're going to get a person to move forward in a way that is super helpful as you are using change talk, and they're like, well, they're ambivalent, and I don't really know if I can do this. This is again where we're going to use some of our open-ended questions and ask for elaboration. Well, tell me what some of the barriers are. Tell me why this is going to be difficult for you. And then we're going to throw in the affirmation, reflect again, and then summarize. And that summary might get us to a place where we can transition into that action planning spot, right? So this is called the ears: explore, affirm, reflect, and summary. So this is kind of the overall goal for using MI all of the time. We want to ask questions for elaboration, affirm strengths and weaknesses, reflect as we go, and then use those summaries to get us to a place where we can plan. So your goal is to be listening for that change talk. And when you start to hear people saying, I want to, I have some reasons, I actually went on the website and looked at the thing, that's when you know they're in a place you can move them forward. If they're like, this is not a good time for me right now, this is not something I want to do, this is too stressful, this is my coping technique, and they're really in that place of sustain, you're not going to necessarily get them to an action plan. But you might be able to get them to have another conversation with you. So we would do something in a summary. It sounds like this is not a change you can make right now, and yet you're interested in being healthier and moving this forward at another time. Tell me a little bit about when you think you might be able to start doing this, or would you be willing to meet with me in a couple of weeks and see where you're at? And we can at least get that person to continue the conversation with us. If you hear that ambivalence go down and they're like, yeah, I know I need to do this. I've been looking at the website. Sure. This would be that place where we would do that transition summary. It sounds like you've been taking steps and you're ready to make some changes. And tell me what you want to do next, right? So we're listening for decreased ambivalence, increased change talk, questions about the change. Well, what do I need to do now? Would be a question you might hear from somebody, and thinking about how it might happen. Well, if I do this, then maybe this would happen and this would be okay. Those are all going to be indicators that they are ready for you to summarize the big picture, ask that key transition question, and then potentially get into some action planning. With action planning, the goal is to not move too fast. Because we want to make sure that we have drained the swamp a little bit, right? It's an onion. You're peeling back the later layers. It's a big giant swamp. You gotta drain things a little bit. And if we move a person into action planning too fast, then we set everybody up for failure from the get-go. So if we're not listening closely, we really need to think about how we're doing that. So once we get to that place where we can be like, hey, it sounds like you're ready to make these changes. I have some ideas that would help you. Would you be willing to talk about this, right? So it's always good to ask permission to move into some of those planning stages, because then that person is saying, yeah, I'm ready to do this. So they're in a headspace that's ready to do it versus us kind of shoving them forward into making that change. They're going to be more likely to agree with us and move forward. So we're going to brainstorm some ideas kind of negotiate that plan of action. Always good to use, your SMART goals, specific, measurable, time phased, achievable, those kinds of things. Identify supports because supports are super important, and sometimes people don't have the support they need to be able to do the thing. They might not have the bus pass to get to the place. They might not have rides. They might not have a bike that is working. Whatever it is, we need to identify what supports they might have. So we brainstorm some ideas. We'll say, hey, it sounds like this might be an option for you, and you could bike here and there. What kinds of things do you think are going to help you be most successful in this plan? Well, if my bike chain breaks, then this is going to be an issue. So how do we make a plan for something like that? Um, Summarize the decision of the client. Ask what they intend to do. So it sounds like you are ready to make this change. We have a plan. How confident are you that you can implement this plan in the next 3 days? On a scale of 1 to 10. And then based off of their answer for confidence, so if they say a 6, say, okay, so 6 is pretty good. Tell me what you need to make that move up to a 7 or maybe an 8. Or if they say a 7 or an 8, we say, hey, that is really high up there. Is there anything else that you might need support wise to move that forward? If they say a 3 or a 4, so it sounds like you really want to do this plan, but you are not feeling as confident as you could be. How can we move you up a little bit to maybe a 4 or a 5 in this confidence level? What is it that you need to make this happen? And then you can continue to negotiate that plan. You don't want to go too far on the scale. Like if they say a 2, you don't want to try and be like, what can get you to a 10? It's just too hard for a person to imagine going from a 2 to a 10. So you just want to go 2 spots. So from if they say a 2, you want to go to a 3 or a 4, that kind of a thing. You can also look at it backwards. If they say a 7 and you're like, wow, that's fantastic. That's really high up there. You're pretty confident. Why did you say a 7 over a 5 or a 6? And that's going to actually get you some information about why they are feeling so confident and what they have in place so you can help support those things as well. So that can be a really great way to help with that action planning. And then, once that's all said and done, you're going to do one of those collecting summaries again and go over the whole plan one more time. And then, say, hey, I'm going to check in with you in a week or 2 days or whatever your time frame is and see how things are going. And then when you have that next conversation, you can use that linking summary to bring it back all in. Hey, the last time we talked, we came up with this action plan or whatever you call it. We came up with a plan. Tell me how it went. How did things go? What went well? What didn't go so well? And you can start your MI conversation from there. Sorry, we kind of went through that last part really quickly because we end at 1:30, right?
Technically 1:15,
Oh,
but
I'm so sorry.
no,
Um,
it's okay. People are still on, so we're yeah, we're people most people are still on.
Thank you for hanging out. Sorry, I was trying. Whew, that was
No,
close.
you're good. Take a deep breath.
What questions might you have about all that? Thank you for sticking in there till the very end. I appreciate it. I know MI is a lot of information. It's a lot of information, but it can be super, super helpful when you're using all of the components together and understanding all of the theories and things behind it. You're very welcome. I hope it was helpful. And if anybody has questions or you want to talk about it further, you are welcome to email me and we can set up a time to chat a little bit about it too.
Would you mind, Dr. Whitney, skipping to the page just with the eval link?
Yes.
And it's a really short, like post-session eval. We'd love to get your feedback. I will send out an email after this with the recording of this session. It has the eval in it and also the resource packet that Dr. Whitney shared. So y'all will get things in your email either later this afternoon or tomorrow.
Yes. It was good to see you too, Brogan and Haley. I like it when the students get to come back. All right.
Yay! Yes, a good
Yes.
refresher.
So, and again, thank you for letting me go over those main parts of MI are so important. We miss those theories and it's so effective in using MI when we know some of the things behind the open-ended questions, the affirmations, and the reflections. You are all very welcome. I hope it was helpful.
It was
Oh,
super
Shannon,
helpful.
good to see you too, Shannon.
Yay! I needed this when I was still teaching in middle school classrooms. Oh my goodness, I wish I would
Oh
have had
yeah,
this.
this is fantastic for classroom management, for so many things. It is so, so very useful.
Yeah.
You're welcome. I
Awesome.
couldn't see all of the students I couldn't see everybody in the chat. What happens is when I see all of the faces, then I don't pay attention to what I'm